Hello, everyone. Welcome to Astrologer Climate Witness today. I have a lot to cover today. I've been trying to zero in on more specifics when I'm doing videos, and it's very hard because I have all this Sagittarius in me, and it's really, I cover spheres in my head all the time. But what I'm going to do today, number one, there's a video, and it's on Nate Hagen's Facebook page or podcast. He's an energy guy, okay, and but you're gonna find Robert Sapolsky on there, and he has written a book. He's an evolutionary or neurologic biologist, and he is talking about his book that he's written, The Brain, Determinism, and Cultural Implications. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm trying to cover all this has to do with we need to face ourselves as a species. When you look out to see what we have done to our planet, we have to come to terms with who we are, how we function, how we behave, why, and can we do better? Now, when I say can we do better, at this point in our existence, I don't think can we do better, and if we do, is going to change the physical changes that we've made to this planet so far. Not in the way we would like. Small local areas, maybe regions we could affect a little bit, but how long is that going to last? Because the changes we've made so far are so intense and so global, we can't really go backwards. We're melting both poles at this point. Yes, the Arctic more so, but the Antarctic now is being affected. There's flowers growing in the Antarctic. You'd have to go and study that particular thing on your own. I didn't cover that today. But by facing ourselves as a species, this brings us to astrology. So I'm a person who's very concerned with the connections of reality on the ground and what we see in astrology. We who study astrology see connections in people in even in everyday environments because there's weather astrology, right? So how do we come to terms with our behavior and what we know about astrology, okay? Our behavior as a species and what we know about astrology. So this is what I'm going to try to address today. It's not going to be the be-all and end-all, but it's a beginning, I suppose. So Robert Sapolsky, his book, again, is covering how environmental events, social events, etc., create our physical makeup in our brain and brings about our behavior because of that. Okay, so one of the things that he speaks of is that there's no free will. Okay, this is a question astrologers have been dealing with for century upon century. This is going to be a big discussion here. Okay, so first I would like to go back for a little bit and cover some things about evolution. Okay, so we come from the genre Homo erectus. Our distinct ancestors discovered fire about 1 million years ago. Give or take a few 100,000 years, who cares? Okay, but that's what they've come up with. Our most recent ancestors began using rings of stone or fire pits about 250,000 years ago. Now, Homo erectus branched off into different areas originally: northern Africa, eastern Africa, South Africa, and Western Asia and East Asia, China and Indonesia. Between 1.89 million years ago to 110,000 years ago, they existed, and the regular height was about 4 feet 9 inches to about 6 foot 1, somewhere around in there, and weight was 88 pounds to 150 pounds. Okay, now, don't worry, there's reason why I'm talking about this. Early African Homo erectus fossils are the oldest known early humans to have possessed modern human-like body proportions with relatively elongated legs and shorter arms compared to the size of the torso. These features are considered adaptations to a life on the ground, indicating the loss of earlier tree climbing adaptations, with the ability to walk and possibly run long distances. Compared with earlier fossil humans, note the expanded brain case relative to the size of the face. The most complete fossils individuals of these species is known as the Turkana, a well-preserved skeleton dated 1.6 million years ago. Microscopic study of the teeth indicates that he grew up at the growth rate similar to that of the great ape. There is a fossil evidence that this species cared for the old and weak. The earliest evidence of a hand axe, first innovation of stone tool tap. Okay, now these are our ancestors, just as much so as the people a couple of hundred years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. These are our ancestors. Yes, they were not Homo sapiens, but that's where we came from. And you can sit here and argue, and you don't have to listen to this if you don't want to. But what we're talking about here is adaptations create evolutionary changes. Adaptations to the environment create changes within the individual and in the DNA, which is passed down. And that change, that adaptation gets passed down so that the species can better handle the new environment that they've been that's put pressure on them. So when pressure from the environment is put upon the individual or on the species, certain individuals of the species, not all of them necessarily, will be able to adapt, and that changes DNA, and it brings about a better ability to survive in the new conditions in the environment. When you think about it like this. Humans have wisdom teeth, right? But we don't need them anymore, right? We have appendix, but we don't need it anymore. We don't eat the heavy-duty cellulose fiber anymore. We eat fiber, but it's not cellulose. This is what I learned a long time ago. And the cellulose fiber is what the appendix was for. But we don't eat that anymore. We changed. And therefore, the appendix isn't useful to us. The wisdom teeth aren't useful to us because the kind of food we eat is different. So, again, there's many changes that a species goes through that brings about changes in the body. And then, according to Mr. Sapolsky, it brings about behavioral changes. And his point is that not only does the environmental pressure change physical aspects of the individual or the species, but it changes our behavior. And according to Mr. Sapolsky, we don't do things according to free will. We do them because of the neuronal pathways that are built in our brain. I don't necessarily disagree with that. And again, like I said, astrology has been dealing with this question of free will for a long time. Well, I would like to say this. let's see. This is how I'm going to address this. How determinism, what I just mentioned by Mr. Sapolsky, correlates to astrology. For instance, if you have a lot of Virgo in your chart, you will behave with Virgo traits. Now, people who don't know astrology they'll poo-poo this because they don't get it, but we do. Astrologers get this, okay? We see this. They'd have to go and study astrology for a while to be able to grasp this, okay? Can't just say offhand that's BS because they haven't studied and watched and observed human beings according to astrology. Okay. In other words, those traits are analytical, needing to fix things, wanting to know the details and taking care of them, understanding things in a mechanical way, the parts, and also things along the lines of making things pure, like culling in the old days when they used to herd animals, the pastoralists who raised animals, they would call out the weaker animals, the ones who didn't bring about the characteristics that was needed in the herd, and they would call them and get rid of them so before they could breed, so they didn't pass down those weaker traits. Okay, that's called culling, culling. So that's just an example of the purity of the Virgo. Now there's a lot of myths, okay, and legends about the Virgo and other aspects of that, having to do with the virgins that existed and the legends of those in the Roman Empire, in the Roman mythology, etc. And we won't go into that. That's for another video. It's a little bit of a different direction, okay? But so with Virgo traits, those are neutral traits, okay? That's some of the characteristics of Virgo. Their ability to discern between things, to analyze and critique, okay? Now, when you're talking about a Virgo individual or somebody with a lot of Virgo influence, it could be a few different things within a chart that orient towards Virgo. You've got positive traits of Virgo and you've got the negative traits. Now here we're going to talk about the influence of the environment on the Virgo, okay? Now, remember, those other traits were neutral. The positive traits of Virgo, being able to give constructive criticism. One example would be a food critic. He makes a profession out of critiquing food in restaurants, etc. Okay? He samples foods, gives reviews. And usually he has to be diplomatic. I want to say positive, but diplomatic is a better word. Diplomatic in his critique, otherwise, he's not going to last very long, no matter how good he is. He has to be diplomatic in his reviews. He gives analysis, and it has to be constructive, okay? And then, therefore, he's bettering the person or the cook, the chef, etc., and the staff, etc., within that restaurant. Okay, the negative traits of Virgo, okay? Destructive criticism by calling people names, being derogatory, hypercritical, tearing people down. Think of a football coach who loses way too much because this is how he coaches, okay? So, now, the next thing is, so here we have the two scenarios in which a person has a choice in how they decide to use the Virgo qualities, positively or negatively. So, according to this individual, Robert Sapolsky, even the decision to be positive or negative is predetermined, and I do not wholly disagree with that. One person may have had the support necessary to develop an ego which can withstand the onslaught of the world's challenges in general, but the other person may have not had this kind of support and never was able to experience his or her own center as a strong bulwark against the challenges of life. Okay, so the individual who is more destructive with the Virgo traits, does he have an ability to change? And this is one of the things you're going to find in Mr. Sapolsky's video. You know, they do discuss whether humans can change. Okay, if he does change, it is not so free will, according to Mr. Sapolsky, but it is because of an intervention which created new neuron pathways in the brain that allowed him to change. He says everything is biological, that the neurons and the pathways are formed, and that that allows for the behavior. The person did not decide. It created the behavior because of the new neurons. Okay. I'm not completely agreeing with this, but I do understand why he says it. I get that the physical aspects of the brain can determine much of our behavior. Okay, but I can say that what if there is an intervention and those new pathways were developed? However, now that the individual realizes his behavior and comes to terms with the negative results he gets by using them, it is still his decision to stick with his old method of coaching, which his ego had been used to and may have gained some satisfaction from, like tearing others down and building himself up. Or he can use his inner strength, free will, whatever you call it, to work hard at developing this new way of coaching. He has to decide. Okay? He still has the old trait. That's not gone. But he has to decide which way he's going to go. And so, does it matter that every single event in our lives creates particular pathways in our brain and nervous system in regards to free will? I like what Mr. Higgins says in the show notes. He says, Dr. Sapolsky also unpacks how the innate quality of a biological organism shaped by evolution and the surrounding environment, meaning all animals, including humans, leads him to believe that there is no such thing as free will, at least as we think of it today. That's the key. How do we define free will? Who cares if it's this vague kind of, oh, I can be somebody completely different than I was before, and then that's free will. Well, nobody really thinks that. I'm sorry. Nobody really thinks that. You're not going to turn into a Sagittarius if you're a Virgo. You're not going to express Sagittarian traits. I'm sorry. Of course, in astrology we have progressions. Okay. That right there shows something. If you're a Virgo, depending on what age, what degree you were born at in Virgo, in the 30 degrees, 30 years, you're eventually going to progress to Libra, okay? And then you will have been able to experience Libra conditions in your life that will key you in on, oh, I think I need to be a little more diplomatic, create a little more harmony in my life. Now, yes, in astrology, we talk about progressions as being mostly not really in the physical world, but maybe, who knows? That's a good question, okay? Does it bring about conditions in the environment which create the new pathway so the person is more aware of a Libra orientation? He's not going to stop being a Virgo, but he's very aware now that there's other ways to be. Now, I had a really good thought there. So, again, progressions. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So there's progressions, and supposedly they are more inner, where maybe in astrology, the events shown by transits helped also in the direction of where the progressed Sun in Libra would lead? Okay, that's a good question. Okay, now, where was I? Okay, Dr. Sapolsky also unpacks, oh, I said that. Okay, now, that's the key. How do we think of and define free will? And even in astrology, you know, that word free will, it's more about, am I going to be a positive expression of what's in me or a negative expression of what's in me? You could look at any particular sign or aspect combinations, and there's always, as I've mentioned in many videos I've done, there's the positive expression of something and the negative expression. Now, it is true that as you go along in life and you come up to a situation, sometimes it's hard to know what would be the positive behavior and the negative behavior. Okay. It's not always easy to determine, but it doesn't mean that we have to be correct 100% of the time. We're human. We have to learn, right? But there are going to be times when we can make a decision. We become aware of our traits, and that's what astrology is for. It's there to say, you have a lot of Sagittarius traits in you. That's one of the strongest energies, influences, however you want to look at it. And so there's a positive way to express that and a negative. So if you've got Uranus in Sagittarius, which there's a generation now that does, that's pretty wild. So that would take a lot of willpower to be able to handle that. Uranus is a generational planet, and how strong it is in the chart has a lot to do with everything. And if you are a Sagittarian or Moon of Sag or Rising Sag and your Uranus is right there, it's going to take a lot of inner power, decision making, to be able to handle that in a positive way. Sagittarian is very much about individual freedom. So kind of is Uranus oriented in that direction. So it would take a lot of learning to be able to handle this and use it positively. But does that mean someone who's not using it positively, you're supposed to be making a value judgment about their behavior? Well, not necessarily. And here's my continuum that I bring up. You know, every planet, every sign, you could look at the expression of them on a continuum, whereas all the way to the left is the negative, most horrible, and all the way to the right is the most positive and wonderful. You know, you've got serial killers over here, and you've got Mother Teresa over here, but most of us fall in the middle of the way we express our signs and planets and aspects. Some of us lead a little more to the left and some a little more to the right, but we're not serial killers and we're not Mother Teresa, okay? Those are the extremes on the bell curve, so to speak, okay? In the middle are most people, and we work at learning where we're at. And at different times in our lives, we might lean a little left or a little right, okay? So that is a good way to look at the expression of the traits within every sign and planet, okay? That way you're not beating yourself up when you're too far to the left, and you're not patting yourself on the back all the time thinking you're this wonderful knight in shining armor when you're always doing everything right, because things change and go back and forth. And you're always going to run into a situation that you're not familiar with and you have to adapt to. And how you adapt, yes, it can be determined on events and conditions in your life before that. Absolutely. But the decision you make, you can't make a positive decision, or you can't make a decision very well if you're not aware of the traits necessarily. You see what I'm saying? If you're not like really super conscious of that, you've got a lot of Sagittarius in you, it is going to be a little harder for you to actually make a decision when you come into a situation, because it's very all in the back of your mind and you're just falling forward or following, events. But if you're like, wait a minute, I see how this is possibly could go down. So I should step back and think, okay, with all my need for individual freedom, should I go ahead and me be with this person who really, really likes, somebody to be right there with them all the time, and they like love the whole um, monogamy thing, and they like the house and picket fence, or this person who really understands that life is a journey and that we need to have adventure and learn from each other, and things aren't always written in stone, which I'm aware that I have this in me, and that maybe this person isn't really the person with the white fence isn't really the best possible choice for me to make. We have a lot of things in us that push us one way or the other. Sometimes we're very feeling like obligated, or, you know, taking somebody else's feelings into consideration. And then we go against what we think is best for us, and really, in the long run, best for everybody. So, okay, now I think you get that point. Where was I? Now, considering our current predicament, meaning our ecological collapse, which also means breakdown of civilization as we know it, I think astrology can help us tremendously into the future. For, as what is my point in presenting all this? Astrology, evolution, determinism. What I am getting at is, by facing ourselves as a species also, we must realize our beginnings, our origins, you know, our evolution, which, if one prefers, can be described as our ancestors from way back, way back. Okay. And they deserve respect, because if they hadn't adapted, even whether it was conscious or not conscious, if they hadn't adapted, we wouldn't be here. I've been saying that for years. When people make fun of, and they haven't really studied much, and they say, oh, they lived like this, they were heathens, they did this, and they didn't live very long, and they had horrible lives. They did fine, or we wouldn't be here. We are the ones that are destroying everything. And there is this, it is true, the maximum power principle. You can look that up, okay? It is true that any species will use all the energy within their sphere in order to survive and prosper and grow. Okay, there's that. So even our ancestors, they were doing some destructive things, but there were still many negative feedbacks on them that kept their populations down, and so therefore their destructiveness couldn't get away from them. It was when we discovered agriculture and stored grains, etc., that we started doing even more destruction. But once we went on fossil fuels, which was like 8 to 10,000 years later, that's when the mass destruction has started. Okay. So, I'm going to read first a little bit, and it goes along the same lines as this, from Jeff Mayo's book, The Planets and Human Behavior. A pioneering exploration of symbolism of the planets, blending their modern psychological significance with their ancient mythological meanings. Okay? I had this years ago, and I just got it again. I think it must have been one of the ones that burned in my house way back. Okay. All right, this is by Carl Jung, Freud and Psychoanalysis. Okay. If the human psyche is anything, it must be of unimaginable complexity and diversity, so that it cannot possibly be approached through a mere psychology of instinct. I can only gaze with wonder and awe at the depths and heights of our psychic nature. Its non-spatial universe conceals an untold abundance of images which have accumulated over millions of years of living development and become fixed in the organism. My consciousness is like an eye that penetrates to the most distant spaces, yet it is the psychic non-ego that fills them with non-spatial images. And these images are not pale shadows, but tremendously powerful psychic factors. Besides this picture, I would like to place the spectacle of the starry heavens at night, for the only equivalent of the universe within is the universe without. And just as I reach this world through the medium of the body, so I reach that world through the medium of the psyche. That kind of equates to as above, so below. Now, I'd also like to read, where did that go? Oh, author's note. Okay. Astrology as a subject has survived thousands of years. Today, it is emerging, and of course, this was, I'm sorry, I want to read the copyright. I did know this, but I forgot. Copyright 1972. Okay, but I'll start again. Astrology as a subject has survived thousands of years. Today, it is emerging from a dark period of several centuries during which its truths were scorned as mere superstitions, as man's increasing scientific increasing scientific knowledge developed parallel with an increasing materialistic evaluation of life. During this period, the charlatans and fortune tellers debased and misinterpreted a great truth. The profound, perhaps even astounding truth about astrology is that through its basic formula, one can learn the intricate psychological structure of one's own being, trace the deep-rooted drives and motives for behaving as one does. Its value to parents, social welfare, and probation officers, teachers, psychologists, medical professions, in fact, to all who seek truth and understanding of the human mind, is inestimable. After over 30 years as an astrological consultant and teacher of astrology to students in over 100 different countries, I have yet to meet anyone who, having put astrology to the test, has rejected the subject as nonsense. Okay? Now, I want to go a little further with the whole evolution thing. So I have a article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I guess. But I have an article here just to give people a little bit better background on evolution. And it's funny because I wanted a succinct article or something that gave like the basics, and I found it. I was like, wow, this whole subject has been something that I've thought about it for years, okay? And it's just, I've honed it over time. Okay. Let's see. I did want to say, okay. First, there's, it disappeared. Okay, taxonomy, okay, of evolution, or however they want to say it. It was right there and I missed it. But it's like the levels of how they classify living beings, okay? Homo erectus is our main ancestor, okay? Main ancestor, okay? That is our genre, okay? Genus, however we want to say it, that we come from. And discovery date, oh, I read some of that, okay? Overview. Okay. Here we go. Early African Homo erectus fossils, sometimes called Homo ergaster, are the oldest known early humans to have possessed modern human-like body proportions with relatively elongated legs and shorter arms compared to the size of the torso. I did read this. I wrote it. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is not what I was supposed to be reading. Oh, dear. I don't know if the other one is still here or not. I think I lost the other one. So, okay, that's okay. Oh, Maybe I sent it to myself. That's what I usually do. Oh, it's human taxonomy is what I was looking for. Okay. It's not exactly what I was going to read, I think. Oh well. Human taxonomy is the classification of human species within the zoological taxonomy. The systematic genus Homo is designed to include both anatomical modern humans and extinct varieties of the archaic humans. Current humans have been designated as subspecies Homo sapiens sapiens, double Y's, I don't know how they came up with that one, differentiated according to some from the direct ancestor Homo sapiens adultu, with some other research instead classifying adultu and current humans as being to the same subspecies. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is the scientific classification. It goes Eucarota, Animalia, Chordata, Mammalia, primates, Haplorini, Simiforms, I said that wrong, Homidae, Homini, Hominini, Homolennius, that's the genus, okay, and then Homo sapiens sapiens. Okay, just to give you an idea, and I think that knowing and understanding, maybe not all of that background, but the beginnings of our, well, primates are the order that we come from. And I know that's going to raise a lot of questions, a lot of people, but now there is more that here we've got Homo antecessor, Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, Homo florescenus, Homo habilis, Homo heidelbergensis, I said it wrong, Homo leuconesis, Homo rudolphinus, I'm saying most of these wrong, Homo naledi. Oh, I'm going to read that article next. I found an article a while back about them. You will not believe them. They're like amazing. Homo neanderthalensis, Solensis. There we go. So I'm sorry, but that is really important for us to give credit. It's really kind of giving credit to ourselves that those beings were able to adapt and learn and develop, and we are the result. Now, why Homo sapiens over everybody else? Because there were species that existed at the same time as us. We know Neanderthal was one, but also I know the name, but I can't think of it right now. They were, and actually Neanderthal DNA and the other DNA is found within us, okay? And it is very important for us to really grasp this ability to adapt. And yes, much of it is biological, but by recognizing that, can we rule over our biology with our minds, not brains, but our minds? That's a big question in history too, Or as in the tarot, you have the number 1 card, Mercury. The symbolism is mind over matter, okay? And how humans have kind of, you want to say they've been doing that we've been doing that, mind over matter. Like we've used our mind to rule over matter or nature. But was that really a good thing? I mean, we were following our very instinctive natures by doing that. It wasn't really like we were deciding anything over and above our natural instincts in a sense, because we were trying to survive, keeping our kids alive, right? And finding food and making more food and storing food. And then it became money, storing money, hoarding money. First it was hoarding food, then it was hoarding money. It's like, these are survival techniques, but is it survival in the long run when you're destroying the planet you live on? I mean, it's not like we really know that there's another planet we can go to and bring all 8 billion people. I mean, if you have empathy, it's not like you can say, oh, the species needs to evolve, and if there's people that fall by the wayside, you know, generally, yes, that's what's happened, okay, over the thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But since we're very conscious of all of these things, for one example of this is colonialism and how we go into other countries and take what we want because we're, the strongest. And, we can go do what we want and we need this and our people can benefit from this, but it doesn't matter whether your people benefit from what we take. They're not going to benefit. I mean, are we going to keep repeating that type of behavior? Can we get past it? And as an individual, when you meet certain conditions in your immediate environment or your political environment, how are you really going to interpret that? How are you really going to look at it? Can you rise above the instinctual, it's all about me and my survival and my people's survival and Fuyan, you guys? I mean, we're already extremely overpopulated. I mean, that's an understatement. So it's not like we can fix the mistakes we've made. There's going to be people that would disagree with that. But if you know the science and you know the condition of this planet, you're going to know that we're not going to be able to fix it. Because first of all, we don't have agency, which is free will, kind of, or something along those lines, to make other people do what we know is the right thing. Like degrowth worldwide, globally, would be the right thing, and it might stop us from maybe going Venus, the planet going Venus. I'm not talking astrologically here. I'm talking about geocentrically, like the planet going Venus, like Venus, which is a gaseous, hot planet. Anyway, so I don't know. Like, it's all about, can our species survive or not? At this point, it doesn't look like it. And they're talking about the sixth mass extinction, and we're in that. So now, knowing that, and if you keep studying, you will know that, how do you incorporate that? If we can't fix it, and we're not going to be here much longer, how do you incorporate that into your immediate life? How do you take that personally? How do you mentally digest that? How do you face it? That's a good question. I mean, it's not that easy to live day to day knowing some of this stuff. And I should put in the show notes that, I have done that originally with my channel, but if there's certain people that find it very difficult to come to terms with that, there's always going to be these eternal optimists who think, yeah, we can refreeze the Arctic. They think we can do all these inventions, which would be interventions to fix the planet. I'm going to say, if there were no nuclear power plants on this planet, I would say, yeah, let's try, If they could start shutting down all the nuclear power plants right now and get them done within a couple, 20 years, 30 years, however long it would take, if they could do that and take care of all the dry casts of nuclear spent fuel rods and all this other stuff, and the spent fuel rod ponds were taken care of, I would have a slim glimmer of hope that there would be some humans to get through the bottleneck, because there's still going to be loss of life on a mass scale. But I don't think we're going to take care of the nuclear power plants. So there's that. Anyways, I should wrap this up. And I hope I really didn't put too much of a damper on people's lives today. I do this because I think it's important, because part of this has to do with the question of determinism, meaning everything is materialistic, even the existence of humans. And our minds and our minds, not just our brains, but they're saying our minds are just a biological product. Okay. And then the other side is, well, there's something more. And even astrologers, that's what we're about. There must be something more. Do I believe in conventional religion and all the stuff that goes with it? No, I don't go in that direction. I just leave it at this. We don't need to know for sure if there's something after life. It's an interesting thought pattern. It's very important to keep in mind the materialism side, so that we can understand ourselves on the planet and how we behave on the planet, okay? And individually, how we behave. But it's kind of good to keep an open mind. And then when you get into quantum physics, who knows? There might be other dimensions that exist, okay? And the whole multi-universe theory, right? So who knows? There may be something else. And it seems to me, because of astrology and the study of astrology, that there could be. Okay. But you don't have to give up one for the other necessarily. We do have to pay attention to science. That is extremely important. And, but then again, it was science that took us down the path of nothing else matters except scientific progress. And where did that get us? We destroyed the planet. It kept us alive longer. It allowed us to have more children, more progeny, gave more food, and we keep having more people and more food and more people, and we're eating the planet out from under our feet, literally, and in ways having to do with resources like coal and copper and lithium and neodymium and cobalt, and so it kind of really boils down more to developing a philosophy in your life that helps you address this in your personal life. Make your personal life as loving as possible. Be aware of your negatives in your personality and try to come to terms with adapting that to create an ecosystem in your personal life that is bringing constructive behavior in yourself and other people. Love. Love does count. It's not always easy. We don't get to pick our family members and we don't get to pick our neighbors necessarily. But working at it is what counts. Okay, I'm done for today. Thank you for listening to Astrologer Climate Witness. Take care.